we need to make the most of it to have the purpose in the life, because this is the only life we're going to have. It actually turns that whole Christian idea around. It's because we don't believe in an afterlife that gives us our morality. If you live forever, then it really doesn't matter what you do today or tomorrow or the day after. And for a lot of Christians, they're just basically waiting out the time until they're going to meet their Savior up in heaven.
Right.
Well, is that a moral way to live? I don't think so.
Well, I think that some Christians, actually is an overlap, and I have one particular page dedicated to this philosophy on my webpage, Backyard Skeptics. There is a crossover between atheism and Christianity, meaning that if you look at the moralities between the two, we basically do want to do the right thing. Atheists want to do the right thing on a situation basis, not for a reward, however. We don't have a reward because we do something good. We do something good for the sake of doing something good, to help anybody. If you see an accident, you get out, obviously. You know, if you're nihilistic and you're an atheist with totally selfish, who cares about that person? They're going to be helped anyway. But the crossover is the Christians want to do good because they want to get to heaven. This is a supernatural belief that, of course, we don't believe that there's a heaven. And we're going to have to get into Pascal's wager a little bit later in one of our episodes, that they're betting that there's a heaven to get to heaven. And atheists want to do good simply for the sake of doing good. So you'll see a lot of good people doing good. Now, let me ask you something that I would like to ask my listeners, to ask other people spontaneously. On a percentage basis, how many people do you think are good?
I would put that very high percentage.
You would?
I would.
Like 95?
Yeah.
95.
I would think so. And I'm hearing that as saying, how would people self-identify as good or bad? I think 95, 98% would say they're a good person.
You see, I also agree with that. But amazingly, almost all the Christians that I ask this are between the 40 and 60% range. And this is amazing. I usually don't ask it to show them how pessimistic they might be about good people, because obviously you don't see people running red lights all the time and stealing at the grocery store. I mean,
hacking at
just don't
babies,
see
whatever.
that.
Yeah.
That's
Just
right.
don't see that.
And I see that atheists,
even in atheist meetings, I don't see that.
I don't. Well, like I said, atheists have to think about life a little bit more. So I think that they analyze life and discover early on in their exploration, self-exploration and self-actualization, that this is what it's all about, is to treat each other good. And I just find it interesting that some of the Christians that I see, and even some people that are not devoutly Christian, but they just call themselves Christian, also relate that very on a low figure. And I say that, and please don't
what do you draw
it.
from that? What's the conclusion you make?
Don't misinterpret this particular question. It actually shows what the person's thinking inside, and it's a very innocent question. How many people do you think are good on a percentage basis? Very innocent, but it actually shows what the other person is thinking.
I see, yes. They're projecting what's internal to the external world.
That's right. You can find out what's happening in their head with a very common question. Yeah. And I'd like for everybody to ask this to one of their friends, their spouses, their children, and find out exactly where they're from, and find out, well, how many people, if there's 60% good, what are the other 40% doing to make them bad? And what can we see them if there's almost half of the people out there doing bad things? Of course, there's 2 million people in America, but if you take the 2 million people that have actually been convicted of something, and you take the 300 plus million that we have, that's less than 0.5%.
Right.
So actually, we're really close to people doing good, because if people were doing bad consistently, obviously they're going to get caught sometime.
Right.
You know what a Skinner box is?
Sure.
What is a Skinner box? Tell me.
A Skinner box is a box where an animal is placed in it and is offered a reward, a carrot or a stick, to perform a certain way.
That's right. Basically, a pigeon hitting an example would be a pigeon hitting a target and a little tiny pellet.
Right. You go to a county fair and you see a little chicken pecking a little piano. Right. He's pecking that piano because he's in a Skinner box where he's going to get food for hitting that little piano key.
Okay. Several things happened with Mr. Skinner. This happened in the 1930s. Forgive me, I don't know if it's Dr. Skinner or not. I'm sure he's...
it's a doctor.
It's probably Dr. Yes, okay. He put a rat in the Skinner box for a week. He put another rat next to it after the first rat learned the Skinner box method of getting food. The second rat was hooked up to electrodes. And every time the first rat hit the target to get his food, the second rat was given a little jolt of electricity.
Right.
How many times do you think the rat was looking at his other companion rat? How many times did it take him to learn to stop every time he hit the target that his fellow rat would be electrocuted?
I don't know.
Now remember, if this rat had no morals, he really wouldn't care.
Right, he would never
about
learn,
okay,
right?
screw you, buddy. I'm going to get my food.
Right.
Right.
I mean, it's a rat.
Right,
Why would you
right.
think he would even think that way, right?
Amazingly, it was a very little number of times, small number of times that he hit the target to where he learned that this fellow rat was going to be electrocuted. And when he got really hungry, he hit it once and it got electrocuted. And from almost that point on, the rat almost starved himself. So Mr. Skinner was amazed by this because, of course, this proves morality on a very elementary level, of course, for rats. So he did it with apes, he did it with monkeys, and I don't know if he did it with gorillas or not. But this proved to be true in the entire mammal kingdom, that the mammals learned right away. And he took mammals from other tribes, not your spouse or your child or your cousin.
Geographical
two different
areas.
tribes, right?
Yeah.
Well, not necessarily geographical areas. Could be two different zoos in the same city, for instance. And the mammals never actually, but they were the same species, never ever actually came in contact with each other. So that actually proves that there is morality in lower species than us. And so it obviously, if any of those ancestors of those species were also our ancestors.
And we would have inherited those.
Yes, of course, we would have gotten that. And you can look in the Skinner box. There's all sorts of interesting information about the Skinner box. For instance, he starts feeding the food randomly, and there was no target in the box. Turns out that the pigeons that were fed the food randomly started doing the particular behavior.
It reinforced that behavior.
Reinforced. One of them scratched his foot. Another one looked up to the left. Another one was doing a little dance. Whatever they were doing at the particular moment that the first piece of food came out, no matter what randomness the food was coming out, they would always start doing that particular
Sounds like a
behavior.
religious ritual.
I was just about to say that, because what is the reward? The reward is in the future that you're doing this, and also in the present of getting a admonishment from your sin. You're getting relief from your sin by going to confession, for instance. That's one. It does sound a little bit like religion, because there's a reward, there's a sin and reward happening there, meaning that you have, excuse me, you have to do a behavior to get the food.
You're propitiating some being outside your box to bring the reward that you want, right?
You know, we could talk about this morality for a whole other issue, and I actually plan on having other guests on, because I want to impress upon our audience that atheists do think about morality very, very much. Probably more than the average Joe, because we have to define our own morality other than that.
Right.
In contrast to other people that are religious, their morality is defined for them in their particular religious doctrine.
That's a good point.
So thank you very much, Stuart, for being on the show. I hope to have you back again.